Keeps popping back up at me. There we go. Hi. Today I want to talk about how to get started with really basic level OSINT. I've been doing OSINT research for years in various ways for various reasons. I started out while working in sales, and I learned how to research leads so that I could create targeted sales pitches for them by incorporating things that were important to them. And I found these things by using open source intelligence or OSINT resources to research the businesses and the key decision makers. I was looking for things like how much money did the company make last year, how many employees, what technologies do they have. When I was researching the key decision makers, I was looking for things to help open a conversation. What did they like? What were they more likely to listen to? How could I connect to them on a personal level? So things like their favorite sports teams, did they have a pet, what kind of hobbies were they into, anything that I could use to form a personal connection to build trust with the customer, to help build the bridge to the sale. The skills I learned researching sales leads have translated into my security work really well. First, a little bit about me. When I'm not working on my favorite hobby, that's OSINT, I am a master maker. I made a small human. He calls me mom, and he's by far one of the coolest things that I've ever made. I'm hanging out with my dogs. This is Thor, Lucy, and Sky, and together I call them TLS. They also have their own Instagram. Yep, I'm that dog mom. Or I'm watching true crime documentaries, probably something about a serial killer. So OSINT is a really broad topic, and I'm going to narrow it down for today's talk. It's not limited to what we discuss, and there are lots of different ways to use OSINT data and to perform research. These are tools and techniques I started out with when researching people and businesses, and it's my hope to get you more comfortable with the concept of OSINT research by the end of our time today. There are lots of really great ways to use the skill, and it can be a lot of fun. Please don't use any of the information I share today to do illegal things. Thanks. The term open source intelligence, or OSINT, describes a type of information and how it's used. Basically, it's any type of information available to the public, even if it's behind a paywall that's used for research, intelligence, or recon. How that information is used can vary vastly. OSINT's used by journalists, legal professionals, security professionals, librarians, and so many more. It's a very broad field. OSINT researching is a great skill to grow, and it adds really well to your security team's techniques. We all use OSINT type data every day, from personal things like looking up a phone number, finding an address, looking to see if that ex from high school is on Facebook. I'm joking, please don't stop people. To our jobs, where we might look up a potentially malicious IP address or file hash or check systems in Shodan or research APT behavior. Sutton and Bellingcat are really great resources for OSINT information. This graphic shows the different types of OSINT information like social media, geospatial data, commercial registrations, and more. It's all organized into what type of data it is, so it makes it really easy to take a look and see where you might find information. So how can you use OSINT? The mindset and skills we use to research threats in our environment is really similar to the skills used to find people. I enjoy researching and I enjoy digging into really fine details. And if that's something that you enjoy, you'll enjoy OSINT as well. There's tons of information available out there about people, what they like, where they live, what their habits are, and so much more. Most people in security are familiar with the reasons we should keep our personal data private, but unfortunately the average user is not, and they leave a heavy digital trail scattered with information. Discussing how this information could be used by malicious actors with your end users can help protect them, as well as the company, by making them aware of the concepts of targeted spear phishing attacks or other social engineering attacks where personal information could be used to manipulate them. There's a great scene in Mr. Robot where Elliot, the main character, is trying to gain access to a target's account. He looks at their social media account for words that can be used in a dictionary attack to crack the passwords. He's able to gain information from their accounts, like their favorite sports team, their address, their pet's name, and so on. There have been a few times in my professional life where I've used OSINT to track back an external malicious email or username. And personally, I like to participate in OSINT Capture the Flag events, or CTFs, where you search for missing people to gain points or flags, and compete against other people to get the most points. These can be really challenging and they're a lot of fun. Getting organized can be a real challenge when you're doing an OSINT investigation. There's a lot of information out there, and it gets really hard to keep it all organized as you move through an investigation. I like to think about where I will be looking before I get started. Generally, I look at things like public records, social media, general web searching to see what's on major search engines. Because the majority of the internet isn't accessible from major search engines, I do occasionally like to look at the deep or the dark web. You'll want to think about who your target is and focus mostly on things that they might interact with. Social media is a great place to get started with your search. I've had a lot of success finding information about people on social media, and most people have some kind of presence on there. Once I was working on finding information for a missing child as part of a CTF, where I was able to pivot off a family member's account to get a lead on where she could potentially be. How I did that was through a very simple Google search. I searched the young girl's name and her location, and up popped her grandfather's obituary. Obituaries can be a great resource. They often list the first and last name of family members, sometimes with their locations. I took those names and I searched them all on social media until I found her sister's account. On her sister's account, there was a recent picture of her sister, and a boy. By digging into that boy, I was able to see that she'd recently been with him, and I was able to submit that information to be included in the investigation package. Mind mapping is a really great way to start laying out your investigation. It's also great to organize thoughts for any large project. It helps to have one place to throw all your ideas and then just link them together visually. It works really well for OSINT, and it's a great tool for beginners. It can help you keep track during an investigation and is great for a CTF to help you make sure you get all those flags. This mind map is created by a member of the OSINT community for XMind. It does have a free version. It's really thorough and it's really easy to use, and it's one of my go-tos when I want to use a mind map. I like it because it has links built into each section, and you can customize those tool links based on what you want. When I'm doing a longer investigation, I usually organize a Trello board, something like this. Inside each card, I can attach artifacts, or if they're of an extremely sensitive nature, I just make a note of where I've stored them. It's important to track your work for many reasons. The biggest is that it's helpful when handing this off to investigation organizers. They need a clear understanding of what you're giving them and how you found it, so that it can be handed over in the investigation package that will be given to authorities. It doesn't matter if you're investigating a missing person, a sender of a malicious email. In both cases, they're going to want to know how you came to your conclusion. And if the information is for a CTF, you need to provide this to get your points. If you're doing a simple investigation, say for a CTF, or if those tools feel a little overwhelming, an Excel spreadsheet is great. It keeps the information easy to read and organize. I like to place a title at the top with the name of the missing person or the username that I'm looking for. Any details that were provided to me at the top, like a missing persons poster or a brief summary of the case. I separate the columns to list what I found and the documentation to support it. Also, never underestimate the importance of a good bound notebook to take notes in as you're working through things. It's helpful to have something just to jot things down into. So tools and resources. There are a ton of resources available for free to help with investigations. I'm going to share a few things that I used when I got started that I still use almost every time. While using tools can be controversial in OSINT research because tools sometimes break or they go away, I personally find it's a great way to get started and familiar with the different types of information out there. To me, it's a little bit less overwhelming when a tool like Spiderfoot can do a quick scan and provide you some starting points. It's important to have a backup plan, and for that, I'll talk about Google Dorking. This is the OSINT framework. It's one of the first resources I started using when I started doing OSINT. It's a great place to start for investigations, and it has a comprehensive list of sites. As you open the topics, you'll find links to websites where you can run searches on different types of artifacts to see what additional data is available about them. People often use the same or similar usernames across multiple platforms, so this resource can come in handy if you hit a dead end or you just don't know where to start. In one of the missing children cases I worked as part of a CTF, their Facebook account was really locked down, so I couldn't see what they had posted, and I wasn't getting much off friends and family members either. This is becoming increasingly more common with younger people as they move away from Facebook in favor of other social media sites. I was able to find their Instagram account by searching their username using NameCheck. It's a list off of the OSINT framework, and their Instagram account was public and more recently active, which led to a new list of friends and associations I was able to include in the investigation. There are also links to dark web search tools here, and if you're going to use them, you will need a Tor browser, and I strongly recommend using a VPN. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the OSINT framework so you can kind of see what it does. So the first place that I usually come is here into usernames. You can search specific sites. So if you happen to know, maybe they're in their late teens, early 20s, and maybe they have a Tinder, you can come in here and use that search to find their Tinder accounts. Or you can come into NameCheck and run a quick search. All of them work just like a regular search engine. They're super easy to use. You type in your username, you hit go. And down at the bottom here, it's going to load up a whole bunch of different account sites. Now, the yellow means that the account is not valid, so it's not a name that could be used at that site. The green means that it's available, and the gray means that it's in use. If you click on one of the in use, it'll actually show you that account. And if you get a red one, it just means that it didn't work. There's something wrong either with the site or it's wrong on the other end. There's a search tool for email addresses. That's them is incredibly useful. I don't have an email address that's going to come up on here, but this one here is really great, and it'll actually link you back to any known addresses that are tied to the email address as well, which is really awesome. If you're looking for a business or you're trying to figure out the format of an email, there's tools for that as well. So you can either use corporate email formats or email format here. And it'll give you an idea of what that company's email format might be. And this is based off other people who have used it. So this may not be valid because it only has a score of 2, but other ones will have scores of up to 10. That'll give you an idea of whether or not it's valid. There's also a link to breach data. Intelligence X is a really great site, and you can type in an email address in there and it'll give you anything that it's associated with for breaches. So, and you can also put in, like it says, URLs or domains or IP addresses. There's a bunch of different things you can put in here to get back information about where it might have been included in a breach. There's also other social networks, which is important because when you're thinking about OSINT, you may not always be looking for someone who's here in the United States. You may be looking for someone in another country, and they do use different social media sites than we do here in America. So you want to be aware of what those might possibly be. One of the sites I used to use a lot is actually a public records site. And I have a funny story about this site. I had a package delivered to my house about a week before Christmas, and I called HSN and I said, this doesn't belong to me, but it was shipped to my address. How do I find out who this belongs to? And they said, oh, send it back to us, we'll send it out. I said, well, there's no way they're gonna get it before Christmas. There's just no way. And it was very clearly a bunch of camera equipment. So I went online and I used this site to find the person, and I was able to find the purchase of their home, but I was also able to find their arrest record. So it was a little awkward when I was dropping it off, but I was able to return the package, which was great. Down at the bottom here is a list of tools. And there is some references for automation, for virtual machines. We're going to talk about virtual machines a little bit later, but this is a great link to some of them. Buscador is no longer supported, so I don't believe that that link will work, but Tracelabs has a really great VM, and we'll talk about that later. One of my favorite things is linked off of here, and it's a game, and that is GeoGuessr. GeoGuessr is super fun, and if you're trying to learn more about figuring out where photos come from, this is a really great game to play. So Spiderfoot is another tool that I use pretty often. It's got quite a few capabilities. I'm going to show you how I would use it to look up an email address. There are 2 versions that are free. There's a cloud-hosted edition, and there's some limitations with that. And then there's an open source downloadable version that has less limitations. I generally like the web-based because it's less work for me to maintain, and I can access it from any machine. I don't have to be on my OSINT machine. If you want to use all the features, they have pay plans, but unless you're incorporating OSINT into your security program, the open source or hobby license is probably going to do what you need. So when you log into Spiderfoot, you'll see there's a lot of different options. If you're using the free version, the only option that's available to you is scan. And to do a new scan, just hit the new scan button. You can put in all sorts of different things into the search section. You can put in email addresses, you can put in IP addresses, you can put in real human names. So I could search like Siobhan Kelleher and see what comes back there. There's modules that you can tune down here, but the API keys are not permitted unless you have a pay license. One of the cool things that did happen recently is they increased the individual scan limit from 15 minutes to 4 hours. So if you're scanning a big domain, that gives you a lot more time to scan, which is super cool. To run the scan, you just hit run scan now, and then it refreshes and will run your scan. I've already run this scan, so we can go back and look at it from the main site. Hopefully. There we go. So this is the page that comes back once you've run a scan. It gives you, I know it's an email address, I found some usernames, I found some raw data, I found accounts on external sites. And then sometimes you'll get another column that will say hacked email accounts, which is just breach data. If you get breach data, you can take that and then put it back into the intelligence website and then find out what breaches it was included in. Sometimes you can get a password there. Now, you don't ever want to log into a user's account because that's just not a good idea, but you can provide that to whoever you're giving the investigation information to, and that can be really helpful. Here you have a list of all the websites that it's included in, and just because a username is associated to a site doesn't mean that it's actually that user. So you need to do a little bit of investigative research to see if that fits the profile of the person that you're looking for, or if there's any actual evidence that you can tie that account to the user that you're looking for. But this gives you a good starting space. There's also a really cool little node graph, and this is great if you're doing an executive report because we know how much executives love graphics. And this shows you how everything is linked together, which is really cool. So another quick demo I want to show you is Google Dorking. Sometimes tools fail, so it's important to have a backup plan. Google Dorking is a really quick and effective way to search Google for something. So say, for example, I want to look at something specifically on twitter.com. I would type site, twitter.com, and then I can type in text, let's say malware. That's going to come back with mostly results that search just twitter.com. If I was to do a Google search and type in just twitter.com and malware, I'm going to get a lot more stuff that's not necessarily related to what I'm looking for. So that kind of limits it down so that you don't have to dig through a bunch of irrelevant sites. Other things you can do, you can add a and or an or and put, and you'll want to use quotes if you put, these are called Boolean operators. That's not really important. Oh, Well, that one didn't come back with much, but it does come back with malware and Exchange. So you can see that it's listing the new CVEs for Exchange, which is really cool. There's a really great website that has a ton of different Google Dorks. And you can use Google Dorking for all sorts of things. Like if you want to find S3 buckets, or if you want to find API keys that are hanging out there on the internet, you can Google Dork for that kind of stuff. Be careful doing that. Sometimes people don't get thrilled when you find their open doors. All right. So I've run into a few cases where the account or the images I was looking for were deleted. So I'm going to show you the Wayback Machine, which is one of my favorite tools. Sometimes I use it to look at things like old message boards from like way back in the day because I get a little nostalgic, and the Wayback Machine has them. And Google Cache, which is super, super easy to use. So the Wayback Machine does take a long time, so I've preloaded the sites so that we don't have to sit here waiting for them to load. You come into the Wayback Machine, you type in whatever it is that you're looking for. Down at the bottom here, you'll see this whole site has not been crawled, but archived pages were crawled. So I would click on this, and then it loads up this site. These are all the posts that I've made from my Twitter account since its creation. I decided to pick on this one, and this loads. So I get like a little March 15th, 2020. There's a little snapshot there because that's when I posted it. This is when it snapshotted. And then when I click on that, it loads up here. So you can see that this is the Wayback Machine. There's one capture. It's from this date. If there were other captures of this site, there would be other highlights here where you could click on and see other versions of it, which is really cool. So you can see how things have changed over time. With Google Cache, you just type and then the website. Hang on, I have it over here so I can just copy it. And there's my cached version. And you can see when it was cached by looking at the view source. So this says it was cached on February 15th, 2021. And if you look at this version, you can see that there's like no extension in my name. That's the easiest thing to notice here. And then if you look at today's, you can see that there's an extension in my name because I'm here today. So you can see that there's a difference in the site. So if you're looking for maybe a Twitter account that was deleted, or an image that was deleted from Twitter or from any website, you can look at it that way. There we go. Okay, so another tool I want to show you that's specific to Twitter is called the Visualized. And this is just super cool. I really enjoy this tool. So the Visualized keeps trends on social media. So you can click and see trends on Twitter, you can click and see trends on Spotify, you can see that trends on Medium. It's really, really cool. You can follow hashtag trends, or you can look at a specific Twitter timeline. This is useful if you want to see really quick, all on one page, what someone's been posting about, what their most tweeted common words are, other people that they interact with. So if I look up my Twitter, you can see all of the posts that I've made right here on the right-hand side. You can see how frequently I post. You can see who the most common people I interact with on Twitter are, so you can see what my relationships are. You can see what my most common hashtags are, which of course today it's GRIMMCon. And then you can see that I'm mostly active on Twitter at Friday at 11 o'clock because I never sleep. And it's COVID, so what else am I doing on Friday night? This information is all exportable, which is really cool as well if you want to include it in a report. But this is one of my favorite tools for looking at a Twitter account because it gives you all that information in one quick snapshot. Another tool that I've recently discovered is called a TikBuddy. And it's actually a creator platform for TikTok, but it has a side effect of being a really cool OSINT tool. So you can come in here and you can find a creator. You can search by all kinds of different things. So if we go to creator search, I can enter a keyword. I can enter like cats or funny. I can search by regions. If I have an actual username, I can do that. So if I search by Kevin Hart, his TikTok comes out. And this gives me analytics about his ranking and, you know, things that are kind of cool, but maybe not so helpful. But if I click on video analytics, it'll actually show me all of the videos that he's posted and how often they've been posted. And that can be really helpful if you happen to have a username. You can come in here. A lot of people, again, use the same username from site to site and post it in here and see if they've got a TikTok. And that might give you more information, especially about younger people.
I think you're doing good on time, but we are quickly approaching 2:30. It's 2:25 now, so you do have 5 minutes.
All right, perfect. Thank you. I got like 5 slides left. Yes. All right, it's really important to make sure you perform OSINT research safely. 2 things that I would strongly recommend you keep yourself safe is using a virtual machine or a VM and using a VPN. You can roll your own VPN if you want. I use Proton. They're all pretty decent. Whatever you use, it is best practice to attempt to connect from that area the target is in. Sometimes that's not possible because social media connections in that area just aren't allowed. You can use a proxy in that case, or just connect from another location. Whatever you do, it's really important not to mix your personal connection with an investigation. It is also best practice to use a dedicated machine when you're doing OSINT that you don't use for your personal or work. But this can be a barrier for a lot of people when you're competing in a CTF. I have always used a well-isolated VM because an extra machine is just out of reach for me. I use a Mac, so I use VMware Fusion. And like I said, there are links off of that, the OSINT framework, where you can grab some VMs, or you can grab the TraceLab OSINT VM. They're all really great. And don't let Linux intimidate you. They have a graphical interface just like Windows does. So if you're not comfortable in Linux, you can just use the graphical interface and work yourself gently into the command line. When I do OSINT at work, I do have a dedicated workstation for that because I don't want to taint anything. Using a VM or a separate machine will ensure that your personal social media information and browser information isn't going to spill into your investigation. It's really important to protect your personal identity by not using any of your own personal social media accounts. You don't know who you're going to be looking at, and your personal data can mess up your algorithms as well. And I'm sure most of you know this, but if you're on Facebook and you're looking at a user and you click into their account, it's then going to recommend the account that you look at them with as a friend to them. So they can track it back right to you if you're using your own personal social media account. A sock puppet account is a fake identity that you use for recon that will protect you from that situation happening. So how do you create a sock account safely? When you create a sock puppet, also commonly referred to as a sock, you want to use an isolated system behind a VPN, like a VM or something like that. Some social media sites won't allow that. There's a few ways around it, like a burner cell or using a proxy service. In the past, I've also used public Wi-Fi to set up a sock account. For a CTF, you probably don't need to be as rigorous. I've set them up at home and on my Wi-Fi in a pinch, but remember not to use CTF socks for an actual investigation. Because I'm not doing a long-term investigation, I don't do a lot of work on my sock accounts. I just put them together, follow a couple of accounts. You can use fake name generator or just make something up that doesn't tie back to you. You just want to make sure that you put enough in there that they don't get shut down. Keeping your socks alive and organized can be a challenge. I keep my socks organized in an Excel spreadsheet so I can log into them from time to time and keep them alive. I use my burner phone to access my sock accounts. You should never log into your sock accounts from your personal devices. You should never log into your personal accounts on your sock devices. If you do either of those, you've burnt your burner and you've tainted your socks. Your socks should not be friends with you. They shouldn't be friends with people that you know in person. And your socks shouldn't be friends with each other. Just follow some obvious accounts like political accounts, actors, sports professionals, whatever's initially suggested to you, and try and think about the type of target that you're going to be going after when you create your socks. So I know this seems like a lot of information, but please don't let it overwhelm you. If you can Google, you can get started with OSINT. While I've been researching people, companies, and other entities using OSINT for years, I only learned OSINT and social engineering were a real thing a few years ago at DEF CON. The first time I participated in an OSINT CTF was at a conference in Rhode Island about 2 years ago. Since then, I've competed in several CTFs. I've consulted on cases related to domestic violence and revenge pornography. None of this is terribly complicated. It's a really good skill to grow, and it translates really well into your day job if you want to start using OSINT as part of your security program. Staying organized throughout the investigation has been my biggest challenge, and the information out there is really vast. Using some of the tools I shared with you today should help you succeed. Thank you all so much for letting me share this information with you. I hope that you enjoyed it and that it took some of the intimidation out of OSINT. You can follow me on Twitter if you'd like, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Very cool. So you were taking questions live, right? So we've got our questions up, and who did the introduction here? Delaney, I believe you did. So let's have you run with questions.
There haven't been any questions in the Discord channel yet. A lot of people have been recommending their own resources, or in general, just in awe of the resources that you've shared. It looks like we do have a question in the webinar interface here. Do you have any tips for creating a Sock Puppet Facebook account, getting around identity verification and other hurdles?
Yes, so two things. If you're creating it for an official investigation, it gets a little bit more complicated, and there are proxies out there that you can use that trick your connection into thinking that you're actually at a residential address. I think one of them is called Smart Proxy. It's been a while. But if you're creating them for a CTF, you can probably just create them from your home connection. And when you need to verify, you can't use a Google number anymore, so you do want to have a burner phone to do that with. And you can just pick up literally any cheap burner phone. I've heard Mint Mobile suggested a couple of times.
Okay. I know a lot of burner phones won't accept cash and try to push for credit card purchases. Is that something that you found issue with being tied back to you on a credit line, or is that not a concern?
It depends on what you're doing it for. If you're using it for work, it's a different circumstance. But if it's for a CTF, you're probably going to burn the sock afterwards anyway, for the most part. So I've not worried about it.
Okay.
So one question I had, do you have like a list of resources? Because you named some incredible tools that the feedback in the chat has been great about. Do you have like a listing someplace or someplace where it's all compiled that we can go and reference later after the talk?
I have a very terrible PDF that I put together once, but I will put it up. I will put it up in GitHub, and I will link it on my Twitter account. That way people can actually access it.
Awesome. Very cool. No, this was great. I actually I got to do the SECTF at DEF CON a few years ago. Okay. And you showed a few links. I'm like, oh, I'll write this down real quick. The TikTok one I wasn't aware of. And so now everyone will be able to find my cool dances, my cool dad dances, you know. But yeah, so no, that was awesome. Those are a lot of really good resources there, and a lot of other good information. So thank you so much for being with us. Oh wait, we have a. Did we get that other question? We got one from Matthew.
It just came in.
There we go.
Do you have any tips for getting your SOC account accepted by other people and creating connections that way?
So it depends on who you're targeting. If you're targeting a bunch of like teenagers, you want your picture to look convincing. And you want the things that you're following to look convincing. Sometimes if you send like a DM ahead of time, like, hey, I think you're so cute, you're more likely to get a connection from them than you are if you just send a friend request. And then there's also the pray and spray, or spray and pray. Like you just friend everybody and see who comes back. A lot of people, especially on like Twitter, will just blindly follow accounts all the time. So I get people to follow my Twitter accounts like that all the time too. So.
Since I learned a few things from your talk, I'm gonna share one of my tips. Everyone can steal. You can steal it as well. Recruiters. If you are targeting someone in an area, in a specific area, go look up the big national recruiters. I'm so sorry, contractor people, friends of mine, but the big recruiting companies, you can probably guess who they are, but find those recruiting companies, then search by the city and say, hey, I'm thinking about getting a new job in the area and this is what I do, and they will immediately link with you. And as soon as you do that, then the circles spread out and it's instantaneous. That's just part of their job. So they're lovely people. I love them.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So if we have no other questions, do we have any other in Discord? If not,